Ladies and gentlemen, this is an episode of First. This is the first 5280 of 2025, and this is the first 5280 with the Broncos in the playoffs. Yes, it's been 4 years that the network has been around, never had a playoff episode. We're usually talking about, oh, our coach sucks, oh, our quarterback sucks, oh, Cam sucks, like all this kind of stuff. And now we get to talk playoff football on the 5280 podcast, part of the MHRT network. I am your host, Douglas Creevy, alongside my co-host, as always, Gage Madrid, Cameron Parker, and he who does not have a name under his name, Glenn Hauser. How's it going, fellas?
Man, doing well. Doing absolutely well.
I don't think I took a breath during that.
Yeah. I just, I'm speechless.
You did what?
I'm speechless.
Oh,
I have my topics list. Who's going to be our new coach this offseason? What quarterback are we going to chase? What about draft order? And how are we going to make up for the lost draft? Oh, wait, no, we don't have to actually go over that.
Oh, how many
stopgap veteran,
right? How many hits can Gage get off of his thing before the battery dies? We need to know that too. Right before we go live, he's like, ooh, that was a good one. My battery's about to die. Okay, all right. Now you got to see how many you can get before the battery dies. And let us know. We'll put a poll on Twitter. Like, how many hits do you think Gage can get before it dies?
You also forgot a couple. John Elway. John Elway's still a general manager. And with the Broncos.
Joel is screwing over the team.
Yeah. And the Broncos have no money.
So Gage and I can actually I'll have a Tootsie Pop and he can do his thing, and we'll see how many puffs or how many licks it takes to get to the center.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that on air.
Okay.
Just licking a Tootsie Pop. All right. So kind of a different show because there are smiles all around instead of being upset. Now, obviously, we hear all this stuff about the Bengals and how they're upset that the Broncos made it and the Chiefs made it easy. But to be fair, if you'd won some games in September, October, and November, you wouldn't have been in the situation in the first place. It's your own fault. Stop blaming us.
I mean, what's the old adage as they always say? You play who is on your schedule. The Bengals played who was on their schedule, and guess what? They lost a certain game that when you actually look at the grand scheme of things, that probably could have gotten them in the playoffs if they won that certain game, and that was New England Patriots, which they lost. So you won that game, you're probably in the playoffs. But you know what? You weren't. The Broncos are in the playoffs. So frankly, Bengals fans, enjoy being not in the playoffs. Enjoy searching for a defensive coordinator. It is a pitiful experience. Welcome to the club. We've been there. So enjoy the fact that you have a regular season MVP of Joe Burrow not in the playoffs. I'm sorry.
If you need some trash bags to pack all your stuff and leave, I have some in the kitchen. I will send you some.
And to all of the biased media out there that was shoving this stupid agenda down everybody's throat that the Broncos don't deserve to be in the playoffs and that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase deserve to be in the playoffs, shouldn't have lost to the Patriots week 1. The Broncos lost to the Patriots last year, and that knocked them out of the playoffs. And now this year, the Cincinnati Bengals lose to the Patriots, and it knocks them out of the playoffs. At the end of the day, no, go ahead.
Go finish up, Dave.
The NFL's not college football. There's no playoff selection committee. There's no wanting to put together the best possible matchups. If you earn your spot in the playoffs, you are in. These are the pros. This is the real world. This is not some fantasy land that lives in Kirk Herbstreit's head.
Yeah. And my thought on this thing with Kansas City playing a reduced lineup is we went toe-to-toe with them at Arrowhead with their full complement of players. We had a chip shot field goal. Bo had driven us down, incredible drive to set us up, and our left side of the line caved in some freak play where it got blocked. So we have already proven, there you go, like absolutely. So we've already proven that we could go against the Chiefs, full team, star players this year. So I didn't feel particularly upset about the fact and that it was a total gimme. Not to mention, Bo completed 90% of his passes, 4 touchdowns, 300 something yards against NFL players. Like 38 points scored and none given up. That's a true beating. That's not necessarily like, I thought the Chiefs would at least make it somewhat noticeable on the scoreboard that they put any effort into it.
Well, and this was the second biggest shutout win in NFL history.
Yep, and probably one of the largest Kansas City Chiefs losses, if not the largest loss in team history that they've had. And I think the first shutout that Andy Reid has endured as Kansas City Chiefs head coach. So, I mean, like, look, this is kind of like where I'm at is like, and obviously it factors in the way that the Broncos were in that Sunday's game. But like you look at with how that team was playing, if they rolled their starters out there, I am 115% convinced that the Broncos actually still win that game because of how they were playing. Like that team, the way that they played, they were on a mission. They were wanting to basically humiliate you and spank you in front of your like entire friends. I mean, like it was a beatdown. Like an absolute beatdown. And so I think, and that is just kudos to the way that, the Broncos were playing and Sean Payton and being on his A game from day from the moment that the snap was happening. So, I mean, like everybody deserves a lot of credit for really putting forth, frankly, a dominating performance. And yeah, it was against the JV team, but that was one of the most impressive and impactful games that the Denver Broncos will ever have against the Kansas City Chiefs, no matter who was starting.
You know what the Broncos did? They took the Chiefs out to the deep, dark abyss and drowned them. And I don't care who their opponent would have been. They knew that this was a do-or-die game. This was basically a playoff game. And whoever was in front of them, they were about to be taken out to the abyss and drowned. And that's exactly what the Denver Broncos did. From Sean Payton's aggressive play calling, going for it on 4th down in your own territory to start the game, being completely just balls to the wall pretty much for the entire game. I mean, this was one where I just didn't see the Broncos losing from the moment that they took the field.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So,
and you guys were both, I was just going to say, Gage and Cam were both in the stadium. So just kind of like paint the picture a little bit, what that was like, from a capacity standpoint, just from opening kickoff and just the feel before the game and during.
We touched on it a little bit beforehand, but it was a playoff atmosphere. There were a few seats here and there, but I used the scene from Angels in the outfield, where Ranch Wilder says, and there's not an empty seat, left in the house, if you will. Like it was a full house. Like it was absolutely a full house, with Empower. And I mean, every single key moment of the game, the crowd was getting wild. The incomplete chants were absolutely nuts. The Rocky Mountain Thunder stomps were crazy. And I think the moment that really did it for me was when they were up 31-0 or when it was that final score, which was 38-0, and they sang Country Roads. And it was like the football equivalent of being at an Avs game and them singing All the Small Things. Like it was that, pretty incredible. Like that moment when they sang that and the entire stadium was contributing to it, it sent chills down my spine. Like that was pretty incredible.
So just a little bit of housekeeping things before we go into the next topic. We have been fortunate enough to be able to monetize this channel. Now, obviously, as always, we do this because we love it. We enjoy it. It doesn't matter if it's monetized or not, but there is the option if you would like to use it down below. You can send a super chat. You can send a super sticker. Not required to. All we ask is a like and subscribe. That's it. Now, you can also back your way out of the live chat. And under the live chat, all of our merchandise for the 5280 podcast and some of the network merch is sitting right there beneath it. All the prices are right there. You can click on it and order something if you'd like. There's other things on the shop as well, but it's very convenient and right there for you if you'd like to do that. So we talked a little bit about the Kansas City game. I mean, we don't really need to get too deep into it because it was playing all backups. Again, it was a complete slaughter. That's not really what we're going to see in the playoffs. The big question is the Broncos going into the Bills, playing Josh Allen, who, in my opinion, it should be MVP. Everybody is counting the Broncos out. The Broncos are going into Buffalo, a big underdog. Can we hang with the Bills? Is there even a shot?
With this pass rush, there's absolutely a shot. With this defense, there's absolutely a shot. It doesn't look like the weather is going to, at this point, it doesn't look like the weather is going to be a factor outside of the cold. But I mean, personally, and this may be me getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I think we win this game. I think we truly shocked the Bills and that we find ourselves against a full Kansas City team in Kansas City next weekend.
I'm not sure if they win, but it's going to be a very competitive game. And there's a lot of really key factors that are in the Broncos' favor. And, we mentioned that, I think that defensively, I think they match up a little bit well with the Buffalo Bills to kind of contain Josh Allen. And I think a lot of that is just because of the Broncos' history with how they've been able to deal with Patrick Mahomes and how he deals with those plays outside of the pocket. And I think that when you look overall with the way that the Broncos play with them, they really want to keep them inside the pocket. Obviously, they're MVP candidate players. So, I mean, like, they can beat you basically, from anywhere. But, like, the biggest thing is you want to keep them contained so that you can be able to get to them, right? And that's one of the reasons why the Broncos were leading the entire NFL in sacks. So that's really where it's going to be, starting from is the trenches. They got to win the trenches. But I think one of the things that this season has also proven is that they can also win with their offense. And I think that's the part that I think is super exciting now, is that, it seems like they have a young nucleus that can be able to get that done. And then the last part is they won, right? It's crazy to even talk about last year, but that game last year that went down to the wire with, Kyle Brandt weeping and crying on the Manning cast, for that game-winning field goal that the Broncos ended up hitting. That game, I think, is going to do so much mentally for them, going into this. It's going to prove they can actually win in Buffalo.
Yeah, so hold on. So this, Gage, I'm directing this one to you because I know you got an answer for it. Josh Allen had to be licking his lips. He made Jameis Winston and the Browns look like the greatest show on turf.
Sounds like a troll comment, if you ask me.
Well, I mean, but it's not inaccurate either. Like, they did put up volume yardage. They did, however, get turnovers in big moments, which ultimately led to Denver winning the game. Yeah. Will Josh Allen put the ball in harm's way like Jameis Winston? I don't think so. He's cut down on his turnover bugaboos that he's had over the last couple of years. He put the ball in harm's way a little bit in that Denver game, if I'm not mistaken. The Broncos, they had a sound game plan. They played well. They were able to get some plays in big moments offensively in that matchup last year. But in this matchup, the Bills are a completely different animal in the playoffs. Josh Allen is a freak, absolute freak of nature, especially this time of year. He's a man on a mission. This Broncos team is going to have to go in there and play sound, fundamental, disciplined football. They can't shoot themselves in the foot with pre- and post-snap penalties. They can't get themselves behind the chains on offense. They're going to have to generate a pass rush on Josh Allen. They're going to have to be able to win their one-on-one matchups up front. They're going to have to be able to make some plays in the secondary. Can they do all of that? Well, based on what we've seen against the Chargers and the Bengals, I don't know. But This is going to be very valuable playoff experience for this young and hungry team. And this is going to be the big building block that we can use going into next season. Even if we don't win this game, if we can go into Buffalo and go toe-to-toe with Josh Allen and this high-flying offense, if we can find a way to make some plays against this Bills defense, then the Broncos are going to gain a lot of respect. No matter what, this was a successful season. We reached our big goal of making the playoffs. So me personally, I'm going to be happy no matter what happens in that game. But Denver could go in there and shock the world because they have gone into Buffalo and won before.
One thing also to point out, I believe, is this team believes in themselves, and I don't think that they're just satisfied. While we're saying like it's a successful season, I mean, we all are hoping that they win. But I think this team is truly expecting to win. And the fact that Sean Payton is telling these guys, hang on to that team picture. This is a special bunch. This is a team picture that, I think he said that he's been in football in 53 years, and he knows where about 5 of those team pictures are, but this is one that he's going to actually pick. This is a special team. This is a group that really believes in themselves. And that's why, I mean, you can't put a value on heart and hunger, and I don't think they're just going to be satisfied with that. That being said, I mean, Josh Allen has just had a stellar year. Their fans are fantastic. The elements. The cold is never great, and even though Denver gets cold, what's that?
The cold has never bothered me anyway.
No, absolutely. If you could sing that, it would even be better. So
it never bothered me anyway.
This temperature in this game is going to be about the same as it was in this last game against Kansas City. Mid-20s, maybe a little breeze, but overall nothing too bad.
Yeah. Well,
and all the talk was that everyone was afraid to play the Bengals, but I think the Broncos have shown a little bit that they're a team to be concerned with as far as an opponent in these playoffs. Anything can happen.
Well, and I think that, one of the things that the Broncos have to carry over, at least from the offensive side of things, and I was able to, catch the game broadcast from the game with the Chiefs, and, Romo hit the nail on the head. Like, if they're able to run the ball the way that they did, obviously, they didn't have a 100-yard rusher, but if they're able to run the ball effectively, it doesn't matter how, but they're able to run the ball effectively, they're a really dangerous football team, like really dangerous. I mean, even Steve Spagnuolo mentioned himself about how Bo Nix is starting to play a little bit like Josh Allen, a little bit. And, you add the little wrinkles of the plays where, in my opinion, the other players need to step up and a little bit be more aware of their, surroundings when Bo Nix is running around and, stuff like that. And then tossing plays over to Javonte Williams. They need to be a little bit more aware, especially now. So thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Great first name, by the way.
Yeah.
And I did want to kind of expand on that point. I mean, you look at Denver, and it's the same thing as it was early in the year when everybody gave us 5.5 wins. Like, that's all we're going to win. But you look at everybody was worried about the Bengals. Everybody's worried about the Chiefs. You look at that first Broncos-Chiefs game, we lost that game by a blocked field goal. Like, we had that game won. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the Bengals. We go for a 2-point conversion. I believe we make it. We win that game. Like, we lost that because of a stupid decision. It's not like we can't hang with these teams. It just seems like at least this week and the week before, maybe even the week before that, the offense is starting to figure it out. Like, we can now get into shootouts with these teams.
Yep.
And Gage, what did you think of Bo Nix's running in this past game? I mean, Cam's talking about the running game, but the superstar runner for us was our quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I mean, he had that one massive run that he shoveled it, obviously, to Javonte Williams. And in real time at the game, I thought it was a backwards pass. I did not think it was a forward lateral. I mean, it looked
like
physics
screwed us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like Javonte was behind him when Bo threw the lateral, but then the ball just carried forward as Javonte came forward. And I'm sorry, that's just physics. You can't stop that. So I feel like that was just one where the Broncos got screwed, but Bo Nix was able to make some plays with his legs. He was able to extend some plays, get around some would-be tackles. That was something that I was really impressed with, and we've seen that from Bo. I mean, earlier in the year, we saw it a lot more. Middle of the year, it kind of started to dwindle down a little bit, and now, as we get later on in the year, I think that the Broncos are realizing this is a weapon that we can legitimately lean on here. Bo Nix he's not a running quarterback per se, but he's a quarterback who can run, and that's a very valuable asset to have.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think that the point that I think is, if you're a Broncos fan and you starting to feel confident about this game, it starts for me with Bo Nix. He looks really good, like really good. Specifically, if you look at that fourth quarter, with the Bengals and the way that he played, and he brought it into that Chiefs game, regardless of who he threw out there, he was feeling himself a little bit. He truly was feeling himself in that game, getting a bit experimentative, and in the way that he was able to use his legs. I mean, to use the comparison, and yeah, it was against scrubs with the Chiefs, but that looked like a prototypical, like, Josh Allen game against the Kansas City Chiefs on that Sunday. The way he's able to use his legs, the way he's able to diagnose, plays down the middle through the seam, and be just dynamic of a passer. Like, if that's the kind of game that you're going to be seeing from him in these playoffs, it is really hard to beat the Broncos at that point.
Yeah, and one of the weaknesses of this Bills team is their run defense. They struggle guarding the run. Now, Javonte Williams is not the answer. We've seen that this season, no matter how many great games he has, Gage.
Hey, man, by his standards, that's a great game.
Yeah. But we have seen that McLaughlin and Estime are a good duo. Like, McLaughlin picks up chunk yardage, which is exactly what we want. The offensive line is making holes. Estime is able to get 4 to 5 yards a clip. He's able to get into the end zone, running behind the fullback. I mean, the run game can work if we stick with it. So my thing is, if we can stick with the run game, eat the clock, we can win this game.
We had a drive that was over 11 minutes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Go ahead,
Absolutely. Gage. Well, just like you said, Glenn, to piggyback off your point, controlling the time of possession battle, if you can get some of those 8, 9, 10-minute drives, or even an 11-minute drive, that's fantastic. Controlling the clock like that is huge. But if you're going to sustain the run game for all 4 quarters, you've got to find a way to run the football against stacked boxes. Mm-hmm. Sean Payton, whenever the defense starts stacking the box, gets scared and starts pivoting away from the run game. You can run stuff like counter and certain other power runs against a loaded front, and it can work. So Sean Payton's going to have to dive into his bag of tricks and find some runs that can work against stacked boxes and loaded fronts in order to get this run game sustained.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons, to piggyback off of why I feel like this game is going to be won and lost in the trenches. The trenches from the defensive standpoint is they got to be able to control Josh Allen and limit him, inside the pocket. Like, they've got to be able to get to him there. Then you translate that to the running game. The offensive line has got to be able to do a really good job in the running game, because, that if we're going to nitpick the offensive line, that is the one area where they might need, the greatest work is run blocking. I think that the running game in general of needing a running back certainly is, arguable in terms of being the biggest need. But, there are moments where the run blocking is, a little bit, to be desired a little bit. So, and going up against, that vaunted defensive line a little bit of the Buffalo Bills, despite, weakness in run defense, they got to be able to be on their P's and Q's and block really well. I hope that they can be able to, factor in a running game. If you are willing to win a lot of those stacked boxes and utilize Nix, I think that, and sustain those, 6-7 minute drives, you're going to win.
Now, I also would like to point out that everybody always talks about me having a Mountain Dew, but Gage is sitting here drinking a gallon of Shasta, and nobody said nothing.
I mean,
nothing at all.
It is my one vice. I will admit it. Soda is my biggest vice.
Now
the battery's running out of his Shasta too, so like
there we go. One of the other things that I think is going to make this a little bit of an easier game for the Broncos is when they are able to stack the box. Sean Payton has found a way to use Marvin Mims. He's got 4 touchdowns in the last 2 games on end arounds, on screens, short passes. He's able to do like a Deebo Samuel type role for the Broncos and get some touchdowns. And I think that if the deep game isn't working, if the run game isn't working, you still have Marvin Mims that you can put where you want him and get him the ball.
And one of the nice things about him, and on his 2 touchdowns in this particular game, I mean, he was able to make these catches and just glide his way, just slither his way in. He has an innate ability that when he's near the end zone to maneuver just past the pylon, and not many players are able to use speed like that to do that. And Marvin successfully did it not once but twice just in this past game alone.
Yep, and this past game was a perfect opportunity for Sean Payton's wide receivers screens and swing passes and all that stuff to work, because you're going against backup defenders who are just a little bit slower to react. They're not going to rally and tackle as fast as some of your starters are going to. So those are those big opportunities where you can get those explosives off of swings and off of screens. And even against a starting unit in the Buffalo Bills, the Broncos can get some explosive plays off of those screens and off of those swings. And that's why Sean Payton commits to them, even at times where it seems like they may not work, because when they do work, they work.
Yeah, they work really well. And it isn't just him either that be able to do it. I mean, you see it sometimes with Franklin in terms of them be able to run the screen game a little bit with their. So, and I think that going forward, and obviously we're talking about the playoff game, but I think that that's what's going to end up making this offense a bit more exciting down the line, because I do think the moment you carve yourself out with a bit of a role for Marvin Mims, I think is also the moment where you can carve maybe that same role with Troy Franklin. And I don't think that they're not necessarily ready for that. I don't think, because the moment you carve it for someone, you carve it for someone else like a Troy Franklin, he's a bit more of a speedster, than Marvin Mims. So it makes it a little bit more exciting. And for Marvin, 500 yards. That's in essence what he's been able to total almost from the midway point of this season. It is absurd the amount of yardage that he's been able to accumulate. And I think that those, it's kind of in my, mind as things been, the season's been winding down just a little bit, but I still have to wonder about what's the future for Jaleel McLaughlin in Denver, whether that's, after 2025 or into 2026. But those particular plays with Marvin Mims, those swing plays that they've done for Jaleel, it seems like Marvin is a bit more explosive when it comes to those types of plays versus Jaleel. So, yeah, I'm very, very curious to see what they're going to be able to do with him in the future.
And I know we've touched on it before, but I mean, we can't. This rookie class cannot be understated. I mean, what a hit all the way from top to bottom. George Payton, Sean Payton, and the rest of the front office did with these rookies.
John Elway.
And they don't feel John Elway. I mean, our vice president.
Joe Ellis, great job.
Joe Ellis, yeah, our chairman of the board. But and just the way they're carrying themselves, they're not carrying themselves like rookies. Bailey is not, and he's a seventh round pick. Franklin is kind of eased up. He does much better with these shorter passes, with these swing passes, than he does with the down the field stuff. I mean, Estime, he doesn't feel like a rookie. He doesn't seem fazed by this, and Bo certainly is. This nothing's too big for this guy. I mean, it's kudos to the guys that came together and put that draft class together, because they were awesome.
Yeah. Then Chris Abrams-Drain, got to give that guy some love too. I mean,
That's right.
He stepped in and has played some awesome ball for this team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I think that for Franklin, I think that one of the biggest pluses, if you will, for him going in was I'm more, talking about, he's been a bit of a disappointment between he and Bo Nix. And I think I've told this before, but like I'd be a bit worried, if it was someone else that didn't, have the opportunity to play with Bo Nix at Oregon, but because he's been able to play with, him at Oregon, I'm not necessarily worried just yet. But I will say, from just the overall player perspective, I am a little bit more encouraged with the fact that you're starting to see him be a little bit more successful in the short and intermediate game than the downfield game. Because the moment that downfield threat starts to hit is really when you're going to start to see more of that game type of, exploding for him and Franklin. So it's going to be super exciting, I think, just for the future and the speed of this team.
Yeah, and Franklin just has to get better at tracking that deep ball. That Bengals play lives rent-free in my head. All he's got to do is run under it. Just keep running, and you're probably going to get the catch. I mean, I have no idea why he slowed down on his route like he did, and it completely threw off the timing of everything. It was a very similar set of circumstances. I want to say it was against the Raiders where Bo and Troy couldn't connect on that deep ball in the end zone. Bo was saying in his presser, "That's on me. I overthrew it." That's bullshit. Troy Franklin needs to catch that ball. He needs to find a way to track it. And that's something that has to improve. But if we can utilize his speed in space on these swings, on these screens, until he gets better tracking the deep ball, then the Broncos can at least get some effective play out of him. I don't think, though, that this should deter the Broncos from going out and getting a guy like Tez Johnson either, because I think that he has his own unique set of skills that could really work well in this offense, plus, of course, the natural chemistry that he has with his adopted brother.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gage, going back to the Troy Franklin play with the Raiders, and you and I were actually in that end of the end zone when that happened. The one good thing that came from that was that then Peyton and Bo had that little argument on the sideline where Bo went back and forth with Sean, and that seemed to really not only establish himself bigger with the coach, and I know that Sean already thought highly of him, but that was something that from all his former players, they all said that Sean loves that stuff, but also from a national level and a respect level, just amongst the league, that really made Bo, shoot up a little bit on those charts as well. And so granted we didn't get the touchdown, we ended up with the win, but that created the argument that happened on the sideline.
Yeah.
There it is.
It's almost was worried that we were going to get a live long
Double
and
thumbs up.
prosper.
I thought what were you saying, Club Dub? I thought Gage was in Club Dub.
Club Shay Shay. All right, so we're gonna call the games for all the wild cards that's going on this weekend, but obviously I'm going to start with the Broncos and the Bills. Who wins? What's the score?
I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills, but I think it's going to be I do think it's going to be a pretty tight game. I think that the youth of this team, the young, hungry team and dangerous team, if you will, that Sean has been talking about so much, the moment's not going to be too big for them. And I think that they win. I think the Buffalo Bills win 27-24.
I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills as well. I actually think that this one is going to go to overtime. I think that it's going to be 27-21 Buffalo Bills. I think Denver is going to lay everything that they have out there, but unfortunately it's going to go to overtime. The Bills are going to win the toss, and Josh Allen is going to march right downfield and put it into it before Bo Nix has a chance to touch the ball.
I'm actually going with the same score as Cam, but the opposite way. And I think it's going to be a back and forth game. I actually see the Broncos scoring first in this game and just getting the Bills a little bit on the heels. But Josh Allen, nothing's going to get in the way. He doesn't cower. But I think defense actually wins this game for the Broncos. I think it's going to be 27-24.
Yeah, I just remembered something. I'm so sorry.
You can't change it now.
I have to, because it's playoffs and it's a different playoff rule. Bo Nix will get a chance to touch the ball. So I'm going to amend it. I do think Buffalo is still going to win, but I think they're only going to win by a field goal. I do think that Bo Nix is going to get a chance to respond. He's going to score, but then Buffalo's going to go down and kick a field goal. So I'm going to go ahead and say 30-27 or whatever.
Okay.
I'm actually going to go with Glenn's answer, and KB82 is thinking the same thing I was. 27-24 Broncos. Of course, the old people are the ones that picked the Broncos. I think that it's going to be 24-24 with 8 seconds left in the game. Alex Forsythe is going to redeem himself and throw the block. We make the kick and win the game. 27-24.
You know, that would be.
I still want him gone, but he'll redeem himself.
That would be
you want
funny.
him gone?
That would be funny if the exact same game that happened, if you will, maybe minus overtime, but the same game that happened like last year happened again as a playoff game. That would be funny. And by the way, I will say, if it ever gets to that point, because obviously the playoffs anything can happen. It's funny. That's exactly what I was just going to refer to. Like, say, you know, the Cincinnati Bengals game, the one that we just, you know, recently had where they should have gone for 2. That would be incredible if like the game ends where, you know, it's to that point where they got to go for 2. I think you could venture to guess at that point, Sean Payton's going for 2.
Yeah, and we get Nance and Romo again. And it was interesting in the broadcast, Romo said he grew up a Bronco fan, and he threw out Elway and Mecklenburg as 2 of his favorite players. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's sick. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Joe Forsythe is going to Undertaker choke slam 3 guys, just pick them up, bam, on the ground. And we're gonna.
I might have to go watch the TV copy now. All I've seen is the All 22.
Yeah, he mentioned that, and I think I vaguely remember that, like, because there was, you know, in these last 8 to 9 years, you know, there was a lot of things just, you know, going on in terms of the QB carousel. But like, you know, there was that one point where the Broncos were linked to Tony Romo. At one point where, you know, he was going to end up being probably a Denver Bronco, and at that point, you're hearing a lot of stuff that he was like a former Bronco fan and like, you know, sort of that. So, yeah, it wasn't exactly news to me.
Well, there's a real connection with Romo and the Broncos because he went to Eastern Illinois. Mike Shanahan was Eastern Illinois, and Sean Payton is Eastern Illinois. So, and Jimmy Garoppolo is, but, you know, whatever. He's not associated with it.
Yeah.
But so that probably had something to do with it. That Shanahan was the coach, and they shared a college.
Yep.
All right,
Then
so
CBS backed up the Brinks truck, and he couldn't say no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so we are split 2-2. 2 Bills, 2 Broncos. So we'll see how that plays out. Let's go Chargers, Texans. Who wins?
I mean, I certainly would hate to do this with the fact it's a divisional foe. But if you were to ask me what team I trust most in these playoffs right now between the Chargers and the Texans, it's the Chargers. And I think the Chargers win.
Yeah, I unfortunately agree. The Texans are having some serious issues on defense right now. They can't block on their offensive line to save their lives. CJ Stroud is consistently running around for his life. Just completely and utterly ridiculous how much of a clown show things are in Houston right now. And not much of it CJ Stroud's fault, in my opinion. But I don't trust this Texans team. Jim Harbaugh has this Chargers team playing disciplined. They have almost completely killed the old chargering narrative. So, yeah, I'm going to pick the Chargers to win this game.
Yeah, I think with Texans this year, really, if their division did not get an automatic spot in the playoffs, they would not be really somebody that would be qualifying, much less be in the 4th spot. So I think they're just on a downward spiral. And quite honestly, the Chargers are fortunate that they're actually going into Houston to play them. And I don't think it can be understated that the Chargers just signed a major offensive weapon that is probably going to help propel them throughout the playoffs, and that's Ezekiel Elliott.
Jesus.
That's
Zeke turning back the clock, baby.
I don't have that video, KB82. No, I completely agree. I think that it's definitely going to be the Chargers. Yeah, right. The Texans kind of did enough at the beginning of the season that they were able to just kind of back into the playoffs. They've got some injuries. They've got some issues. I think that the Chargers take that one. So congrats, Charger Bill, on your team making it to the playoffs and getting a first-round win.
Yeah, you can't even see the nipple clamps under Bill's jersey there. That's
right. It's perfect, except for like the collar there. But other than that,
there you go. Maybe a little bit.
Good.
I didn't realize Bill had such nice, long, flowing hair.
That's right. I didn't know
folds it in the back.
Oh, is it
and
one of
those? He's got a scrunchie back there.
He's got like the ponytail up top, like the.
Yeah.
Bill rocking my man bun.
Yeah.
Now we got the Steelers and the Ravens.
Ravens are just destroying the Steelers. Like absolutely destroying them.
I don't think we need to waste any time on this one.
I mean, if that last drive for the Steelers just showed what the Ravens are going to be facing, just the ineptitude of this Steelers offense. Russell Wilson making these mistakes, George Pickens folding like a $3 suitcase. I mean, this the Ravens have got to be licking their chops.
Yeah, like Russell Wilson is starting to show the Russell Wilson from Denver. Like it was a good 3-game run, but after that, now you're getting the Russell Wilson that we had to deal with. The Ravens take that one easy.
And actually,
does he get pulled? Do you think?
Lamar?
Does Justin Fields? No. Does Justin Fields play this game?
Lamar might get pulled if they're up by 40.
I was gonna say that. Exactly. Yeah, Lamar.
Or you have to go to the bathroom.
Right. Actually, if the Ravens actually play with what they are capable of, the Ravens are my Super Bowl pick. I think that they're just a really hard team to beat with Lamar and specifically Derrick Henry. Like they are a really difficult 1-2 punch. Like really difficult 1-2 punch. So if they're able to do what they can, like they have a very good chance of getting to the Super Bowl.
Okay. Packers Eagles.
I have to take the Eagles right now.
I am going to go with the Eagles, yeah. I think the Eagles are really hitting things at the right time right now. I think that's one thing you can say is they might be one of the hottest teams that are going into the playoffs right now.
And the Packers are kind of hitting a hard skid. I'm sorry, Glenn.
Yeah, I think just by virtue of being the home team, I think the Eagles end up winning this one.
Well,
but it's not. It's kind of an uninspiring game for me. I don't know. It's just.
I know that my pastor and my boss is a huge Eagles fan, and I know sometimes he watches the show. So I'm going Packers all the way. It's going to be a huge blowout because the Eagles suck.
Huh.
So Mike's having his review tomorrow morning. Yeah.
So, right. Commanders Bucks.
Bucks.
I'm calling Commanders. I think.
Being a Daniels fan.
I think there's a. Wow. I think they're gonna get through round one.
Okay.
I may have a little bit of bias towards this one. My good friend Robbie's a Bucks fan, and I've been rooting for the Bucks as kind of a side team for the last several years. But I do think that overall, just the way that Baker Mayfield's been playing right now, I think he's going to go in there and light up this Commanders defense. That defense does have a few warts. It's going to be very similar, I think, with Denver Buffalo, where the Buccaneers are an experienced playoff team, and their playoff experience is going to show here. I think Jaden Daniels is going to have a great game, but I just have to go with the more experienced playoff team right now.
Well, you know me and my love sandwich with Dan Quinn and Sam Hartman, so Commanders all the way, baby. I said it. Vikings,
Rams, actually.
Wow. All right. I think the Vikings pull it together. I mean, Sam and Justin Jefferson just could not connect the other day, and it was just, I mean, to go 4 and out on to not convert even any points on a 4th and goal twice. Yeah, I do think they bounce back. I just don't think the Rams are in the same ballpark as the Vikings.
Man, I don't know.
I was making fun of Bill because he's also is a Vikings fan, but I do think that it's going to be the Vikings. I think the Vikings pull it out.
I don't know, man. I think that Sam Darnold, he really did kind of collapse in a big moment there in Detroit. And as far as the Rams go, they are a very scrappy team. I think Matthew Stafford is the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. He is like
Hall of Fame.
Top tier elite quarterback, Hall of Fame, absolutely. No question. I think Stafford's going to go in there and he's going to light up Flores' defense. Like, I think it's going to be a blowout, quite frankly.
Why do you think that the ball was sailing so much on Darnold?
That's what he does.
Nerves.
I just think he had the yips.
Yeah. I also think nerves.
Did you guys watch that Vikings-Lions game where they showed J.J. McCarthy on the screen and it wasn't J.J. McCarthy?
No, I must have missed that. That must have been the first half before I got home.
That was not J.J. McCarthy that they put on screen.
But I think the other part of it too is, this is also Sam Darnold's first ever, playoff game. And, I mean, if you're looking at it just simply from this game, who are you going to be, trusting? You're going to be trusting Sam Darnold, or you're going to be trusting Matthew Stafford, who's won a Super Bowl before with the Rams. Taking Matt Stafford. And then not just that, but obviously Matt Stafford is throwing them the ball, but he's able to connect, and you are able to get, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua going. That they are a very sneaky, true dark horse Super Bowl team. If they're able to get going with both of them, they are sneaky at that point to where they can get in.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so that covers it for the playoffs. That covers it for the Broncos and the Bills. That covers it for the Broncos and the Chiefs game. So now we're going to get into a couple of other things. And the main one I want to talk about is actually a video that Gage made on Broncos Syndicate, where he talks about potentially losing some coaches, some personnel with the Broncos. And what I mean by that is Vance Joseph, who has been contacted for an interview with the Jets, and David Shaw, who has been contacted for an interview with the Bears. So, Gage, your story, go ahead.
Yeah, I just made that video too right before we went live, but
I watched it while I was pooping, so that's why.
Nice.
That's why I knew it was there.
But
that's how I get my time.
I'm glad to know that you watch my content on the shitter, man. Love it. But
hey, Gage, he's usually on there 25 minutes. If you could stretch out the videos a little bit more.
Yeah, you stretch the videos out to like 23, 24. I'm good.
You could probably watch my whole day's worth of content there. But Vance Joseph, he has been requested to be interviewed by the Jets. I believe they've already conducted the interview, if I'm not mistaken. But David Shaw, he has also been requested to be interviewed by the Chicago Bears. As far as Vance Joseph is concerned, I would be willing to let him leave if it's for a head coaching job. If some team contacted us and said, we want to hire Vance Joseph as our defensive coordinator, the Broncos would have every right in the world to block that interview. It would be a lateral move. There's no sense in that. Obviously, I'm hoping that Vance Joseph realizes that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. He's been the head coach of a dysfunctional organization before under the John Elway and Joe Ellis-led Denver Broncos. I don't think that he'd want to go to another dysfunctional organization in the Jets. He's got a good thing going here in Denver. He's maintained his home here in Colorado, even when he was the defensive coordinator of the Cardinals. He loves this area. He went to college in this area. So I just hope that maybe Vance Joseph realizes that this is too good of an opportunity to leave here in Denver. As far as David Shaw is concerned, I don't think that the Chicago Bears are going to hire him. I hate to be so brutal and upfront with saying this, but this smells like a Rooney Rule interview to me. That's one of the biggest flaws in the Rooney Rule, is that you'll have these guys who are probably never going to get hired get interviewed just to go ahead and satisfy the Rooney Rule. So I'm not a huge fan of that. Hopefully David Shaw actually does get some considerations, because I do think he is valued. But another dark horse that the Broncos might end up losing is Davis Webb. there's some rumblings that the Giants might move on from their offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, and a few members of Giants media have said that one guy to keep an eye on is Davis Webb. He was drafted by the Giants back in 2017 under a different regime, but he actually has a connection with Brian Daboll because he played under Daboll in Buffalo. So that is a name to keep an eye on for the Giants.
Yeah. And I think that if you're Vance Joseph, I mean, you also have to look at the whole body of work, and in the sense of like, the teams that are out there, and it is a very small amount of, teams that are looking for a head coach. And I think if you're looking at probably the teams with the most attractive jobs are the teams that are offensive led. And when you look at the ones where they are absolutely crappy jobs, that would be the Jets, the Saints, the Bears. I mean, like, they are bad jobs. The one where I might be a little bit worried would be that Saints job, just in the sense of like, is Sean Payton or is Sean Payton going to put in a pretty good word for that Saints organization for a guy like a David Shaw or a Vance Joseph, and they end up going in a completely unrelated, direction, if you will, and hire David Shaw, or they hire Vance Joseph. But yeah, if I'm Vance, and I've already had a head coaching gig, regardless if it was the Broncos, I want to go to a place that's stable. I truly want to go to a place where I know that I'm going to be on my feet, to a certain degree. It's like Dan Quinn going to Washington. I want to make sure that I'm going into the right situation. And so I think the other thing that's not going to be favoring for Vance is there's some younger versions of him, if you will, in this cycle. Aaron Glenn and Brian Flores. Those are the two guys that, I would probably, want to lean more to. And then if you're looking at it from the defensive side of things, or maybe the entire staff in general, for me, the one guy actually that I would be the most worried about losing regardless is actually Jim Leonard, because I have no idea. I have no idea.
Ken loves Jim Leonard.
Obsessed.
Well, yeah. I just have no idea, because he's a hot commodity. And I mean, if he's a hot commodity, I think that, he's either going to take a defensive coordinator job. He's clearly had interviews there. Yeah, so and then of course, college football, and then, people who follow college football know that he's a pretty hot name, or been a hot name in college football. So, but I do think if Vance leaves, you are talking about Leonard as your replacement, which, by the way, had been the plan since day one.
See, and that was my other question, with Dennis Allen being fired and available. If Vance Joseph goes somewhere else, do you think Peyton would try to bring in Dennis Allen?
No.
Or stay in out?
Doesn't feel like it. Doesn't feel like it. And Albright also said that he thinks that VJ is going to get an interview with the Raiders as well. But one of the things too that with coaches, yes, I agree with Jeff on this. Davis Webb, like when the Broncos exit the field, when the offense exits the field, and you see Davis, and Bo goes directly to him, like he's always there. There's a synergy that would clearly be missed should he move on. And the Giants would seem to be a very good opportunity for him, especially if they're able to get one of the top two quarterbacks this year. But it's not generally looking too good for that. Well, but one of the things I did want to mention is coaching salaries are not subject to any sort of salary cap.
Yeah.
So should some of these coordinators, or even some of like a Davis Webb, who's a quarterback's coach, should they want to move on, our ownership could bump up their salary to where it would be commensurate with a coordinator position, or even a head coach position with another team, if we wanted to keep those guys.
Well, and again, this is one of the things that
something I was
said
thinking
in his video, is that if somebody was making a push for Davis Webb to be an offensive coordinator, we could bump him up to offensive coordinator and then make our current offensive coordinator like a special assistant or assistant head coach or something like that.
Assistant head coach, probably, because we just lost ours with Westhoff. So name Lombardi the assistant head coach, give him a promotion, and then you can bring up Davis Webb, and he can still be working pretty much one-on-one with Bo, but he's now the offensive coordinator. He's more involved in game planning and install and all of that stuff.
And Davis may want to see this through, he's got a tremendous asset in Bo Nix and a lot of years ahead with this. So that's a very good scenario that you've painted there, Gage. I think that actually is very feasible.
Well, and there's another angle to this, which is the very, comparable, if you will, and that is a guy from the Sean Payton tree, Dan Campbell. Ben Johnson, right? Ben Johnson, and granted, we're talking about an offensive coordinator with a QB coach, but it's a very, almost comparable situation. I mean, he's been able to sit out a couple of these cycles, might actually end up lucking out and getting a head coaching gig, this year, or because of the limited jobs, he could just do the exact same thing and be like, you know what? I'm just going to wait it out and I'll try again next year. I'll interview for some jobs and I'll try again next year. There's a precedent there, at least for, Davis Webb. And I think that I think if you're looking at it just as far as the teams are concerned, the Giants are the one team, I think, just the one lone team where you would be worried about losing him. And if they end up moving in a completely different direction in terms of quarterback and OC, if you will, then I think at that point you can very much confirm things that Davis Webb will still be a Bronco.
I mean, can you picture Davis Webb and Tommy DeVito? I mean, the magic, like magic.
Yeah. So let's take
Drew Lock.
Let's take a spin around the NFL with some news. Obviously, we're talking coaches, so we might as well go ahead and hit that. The Raiders, a trash organization as always, firing their head coach Antonio Pierce like nobody saw that one coming. They should have fired Telesco too. No, keep him on. General manager Ran Carthon from the Tennessee Titans got let go. Let's see. Doug Peterson from the Jags and Gerard Mayo from the Patriots. Boy, he really got crapped on, didn't he?
Sure did.
And I think everybody's pretty aware that Mike Vrabel is probably going to be the head coach of the Patriots. I'm assuming, unless he's got some vendetta against him or something, but
I don't know. He's buddies with Tom Brady, part owner of the Raiders. That could be a somewhat tug of war there. That'll be interesting. But Vrabel is interviewing with the Patriots on Thursday, and there is an opportunity where they could hire him right on the spot if they can come to an agreement. And it's interesting to point out too is that
divisional round.
What's that?
I thought you couldn't hire until after the divisional round.
Well,
if you're a free agent coach, you can hire at any time.
Okay.
He was a consultant with the Browns this year, and they actually let him out of his contract a week early, really more to put him on the map and actually give him somewhat of a head start over some of these other candidates. But if you remember, Vrabel was inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame, and this is a guy that's caught 10 passes as a linebacker in his career, all for touchdowns, which is a crazy stat in itself. But he got a lot of flack, and it was kind of one of the starts of the beginning of the end to his relationship with the Titans when he actually went to the induction during the season and was gushing over the Patriots and what it meant to be a Patriot and wearing the red jacket and the whole thing. And that really rubbed a lot of people in Tennessee the wrong way. So he does seem to be a natural fit, but I can't overlook the fact that the Raiders are staring us straight in the face there. And also Vrabel, from reports, and I don't mean to ramble on, but reports are saying that he was a little miffed last year when Mayo got the job over him, even though that was a coach in waiting.
Yeah.
Well, they had to do that.
You know what's funny about that is Mayo essentially replaced Vrabel as the Patriots starting linebacker. So there was some history between Mayo and Vrabel already, because Vrabel didn't want to get traded to Kansas City when he was still playing. And so, yeah, there's kind of already some history there with Vrabel and Mayo. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if he gives Robert Kraft the double middle finger even after getting wined and dined by him.
Right.
Well, and I don't know if this is true or not, but wasn't there something in Gerard Mayo's contract that he would be the next coach after Belichick.
Yes, but what's interesting, and Dan Patrick said it, that Belichick did not know that was in Mayo's contract. Which is a little more of a.
So it's like the Willy Wonka contract. It's like the very fine,
Right.
the very fine print. I think if I was the Patriots, I would. If it was me, I mean, Vrabel is probably your exception because he does seem like to be a really good players coach. And it certainly seemed like he was run out of town by the Tennessee Titans in the organization that they are as well. But if I was the Patriots, I'm having a very open-ended, search. I think one of the reasons why I think you may be leading into Vrabel is the fact that Elliott Wolf is still there. And so if it was me, I would want to actually do everything I possibly can to get Ben Johnson. If I was New England Patriots, like bring him in, have him be able to work with Drake May, and not just that, but like kind of like deviate, not even kind of, but just deviate altogether from the Belichickian way. You had Belichick for all those years. You go out and get Mayo, and then you might actually bring in, Vrabel. I don't know. Let's kind of deviate off of script a little bit and be adventurous for once. You know what I mean? Like, and bring in Ben Johnson or, bring in someone else. And so
it didn't work for the Saints when they tried to keep the band together after Sean Payton left. I don't think it's going to work for the Patriots after trying to keep everybody together with Belichick gone.
Well, I mean, in true Bob Kraft form, this coaching search may not end with a happy ending.
Yeah. Well, and if I'm Mike Vrabel and I've got the pick of the litter, I'm going Chicago. Like that. I mean, that job is like tailor-made for a coach that doesn't have to rebuild the whole roster. Like, you have a decent defense. You've got the pieces on offense. You need to add a little bit more, but you got the quarterback. You find the right offensive coordinator. You're good to go. I don't know. I'm not a coach. Cliff Kingsbury. Steal him.
Yeah, but then if you get your offensive coordinator and your Vrabel, you're probably going to lose that offensive coordinator to a head coaching job. I think that the Bears would be stupid to hire another defensive-minded guy, even if it's one of the best ones available in Vrabel.
And I actually...
Who do you go with for the Bears?
I honestly don't know.
I
think it's going to...
pushing for Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I think Ben Johnson would want to. I mean, they have offensive... They've got their quarterback of the future, seemingly, and they have wide receivers. So there are offensive skill players on that team that he could build upon. The Patriots don't have that. And Elliott Wolf he picked Baker and Polk as wide receivers instead of Ladd McConkey. And that's one of those picks that just keeps getting referenced over and over again, especially as McConkey was catching everything, looking like Wes Welker out there. And these other guys were not doing jack squat. So I don't think Ben Johnson would want the Patriots job. I think they're going to try to interview him, but there's not enough weapons there. And then the fact that they blew the number one pick, what a valuable asset that is when you actually already have your quarterback in Drake May. I mean, even if you bump back one spot, you bump back two spots, what kind of picks could you get? What kind of players could you get? You could rebuild that roster so much faster. But they chose to beat the Bills and they get to the fourth pick. That's not worth anything to them. They're going to stay in that spot and get whatever skill player. I mean, they may get Travis Hunter. You just never know. But I mean, they're gonna end up picking somebody there and not being able to compile picks that they had, before that game kicked off. Crazy set of circumstances.
Well, and I will say, I think that, to Joe Brewer's comment that was pulled up, I think that it still has to be said, the Bears organization from the top is not great at all, based on the history. And, you look at everything that they've, poured into in terms of even just a veteran coach of John Fox, it's not really resulted in anything. Then they bring in, Matt Eberflus, right? They bring in Matt Eberflus. That's never worked in, quite well at all. And every single time there's been, problem after problem, which is, you go from Mitchell Trubisky, another top flight quarterback, never worked out. Justin Fields, really bad situation, never worked out. And now it looks like Caleb Williams, statistically, it probably should say, based on touchdowns and interceptions, that he had a good year. He did not. Caleb Williams actually was a pretty underwhelming season for a first-round pick. I mean, it was really bad. And for the cast that he had, that was really disappointing because you can definitely say that, the Bears maybe did everything they could and bring in some talent there. But again, it is a very, very bad, environment right now. It's a little bit better environment than the Jets, certainly. But the Jets, the Bears, and the Saints are still in that tier for me as really less attractive jobs, even though the fact that you got Caleb down there.
And if I could jump in again, I'm sorry, Gage, to cut you off, but Flying Dragon just has two comments back to back, and really, I had mentioned Ben Johnson and the offensive weapons, but the other thing that you do need to take into effect, and pull the other one that right above it, is that division is absolutely stacked. Yeah. And it doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere downhill. I mean, the fact that the third place team won 11 games this year, so maybe that isn't that attractive as a job, because how effectively or how quickly are you going to be able to break through and win those important division games when there are 6 division games against the Lions, the Vikings, and the Packers? So I'm backing off a little bit off of that job being attractive, and I appreciate Flying Dragon pointing out those other, referencing those other teams, because it makes perfect sense.
They might be better, a little bit, but they are almost the Raiders of the, the Raiders of that division. It's almost like they're set up to fail. And I know that sounds harsh.
Yeah. And there's a lot of other teams with a lot of interviews here. Looking at this list, honestly, Rex Ryan to the Jets just makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
Well, it really does. The Jets suck. Go back to Rex Ryan. What else are you going to do? Who else is going to handle Aaron Rodgers?
Well, he's not going to be there. The Jets aren't going to bring Rodgers back.
No.
Woody Johnson's teenage son said, "Don't bring that guy back. His Madden rating wasn't high enough."
They're also everyone in the league circles is actually expecting Rodgers not there at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. Based on the way Rodgers was acting after that game, I think this might actually be it for him.
Yeah, I think so too.
God. Robert Saleh, does he end up being a head coach again?
No, but I do think he's gonna. Actually, my early landing spot is Cincinnati.
I think he might go to San Francisco. I think that Kyle Shanahan might try to get him back.
But it's probably one of those two, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, San Francisco does make sense. He left for an opportunity and not because he was shit-canned.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked Ben Johnson, Lions offensive coordinator. What about Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator for the Lions?
He's a fun one. He's one that you could probably say was maybe like Fangio to a certain degree, or maybe even Vance Joseph in terms of getting to the point of having a gig. And the last couple of cycles, there's a fair argument to be made. He probably should have been a head coach a little bit earlier. And specifically with how they've been playing, and for Dan Campbell, I mean, he's a really, really good coach, and it certainly seems like he's cut from that same cloth of Vance Joseph and Sean Payton, and and entirely from that tree. So I would love to see him in a spot like that with maybe the Saints, or maybe even the Jets for that matter. Get back to maybe that defensive roots and how bad that defense has really fallen off. But I do think he's gonna be a hot candidate.
Early indications are he's pretty heavy favorite for the Saints job.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Anything else we need to talk about, or did we cover it all?
We got it.
Yeah, I think we got it.
I'm hoping we have these same smiles on our faces next Tuesday. But to echo what Gage said earlier, regardless of what happens, this season was a success, and the fact that we have a lot to look forward to in the future is probably the most exciting part.
I will and again, I don't mean to go on bunny trails for getting ready to end this, but I will say this: if the Broncos do come away with a victory, as Glenn mentioned, and Mundungus mentioned, if the Broncos do win, given maybe some certain situations around that, I would actually expect a lot of the Sean McDermott firing rumors to get loud.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, big time.
And then you have Ben Johnson. Then you have a good spot for him.
Yeah. As far as Sean McDermott is concerned, just to briefly touch on him, I don't think that there's any scenario where he's back if the Bills don't make the Super Bowl this year. It is Super Bowl or bust in Buffalo.
And by the way, regarding coaching stuff, McCarthy's deal expires next week too.
And he was denied. The Cowboys denied the Bears' request to interview Mike McCarthy,
which is funny. Interestingly enough,
why? I'm just completely baffled that
because Jerry Jones is going to bring him back.
That Micah Parsons and Dak Prescott both are saying that they want him. I mean, it's crazy.
Jerry Jones sucks. That's about it. Will we not? Well, not if we talk about the draft and free agency. We will talk draft and free agency when Denver is out of the playoffs. We got to figure out where they're going to draft first before we can figure out who they might go after.
Yeah.
So once that happens, which won't be until after the Super Bowl, then we'll talk about the draft and free agency.
Well, I was going to say, the good news is we have like a handful of months, where we can be, talking about the draft. Heck, we might even do a mock draft, and we've done that before. We might
Let's do one right now. Let's whip out a mock draft. No,
just for you,
David. Whip out anything. So we goof on Jerry Jones and we just talk about him being the problem. But quite honestly, I'm fine with him staying in that position and the Cowboys just toiling in mediocrity for the rest of his life.
Yep,
that's the best case scenario for me.
And that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like the Raiders and Tom Telesco. All right, so let's see. We want to thank everybody for Trent Baalke, and he's staying too.
Like he's the. I mean, Baalke from Perfect Strangers would have been a better general manager down
there. And the GM from the Colts.
So I don't know if you guys saw this. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but Shad Khan was on a Zoom with Trent Baalke. They were on separate screens, but they were on a Zoom call together. And a reporter asked Shad Khan if he would consider moving on from Baalke if the new head coach wanted to do it. And Khan was like, yes, I would consider everything, And, I would be asking, how could you improve that position, yada, yada. All while Baalke is just sitting there trying to keep a straight face. And I don't think Khan even realized that Baalke was on that call.
Well, and one of the other things is that any head coach that gets hired by the Jags is reporting directly to Khan, not Baalke.
Oh man,
best mustache ever.
The best. Yeah, it's close.
I've seen it in person. It's glorious. Yeah, I was 6 feet away from the guy. It's pretty spectacular.
It touched you from that far away.
I did the Matrix thing.
He's short. And you walked right by and tickled your own.
Just the visual picture. I did not need.
All right. Well, on that wonderful note, we want to thank everybody for joining us in the chat today. It has been a lively show. I love doing shows where we're not depressed. It's awesome. Check until next week. But make sure you check out all the shows on the MHRT network. We got shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the neighborhood, as well as the pregame and postgame show on game day, whenever that may be. Also, make sure you check out the shows on our partner network, the Orange and Blue Network, as well as Broncos Syndicate, hosted by Gage Madrid. Make sure you check that out. Mainly Broncos by Cameron Parker. Go check that one out too. I mean, mainly Broncos with Cameron Parker Poo. Go check that one out too. A lot of shows on the network. Make sure you check it out. Like, subscribe, check out the merch shop if you would like to. There's some pretty cool things in there. At least I think I designed them, so I got to think they're cool. But we want to thank everybody. We love the Broncos. We love Broncos country. We're excited for the playoffs. We're excied for a playoff win. And we'll see you guys later. Peace!
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out.